class. You listen to him, this will be the number one student. That's the only candidate for that position. This will be the number one student in NIMELSSA. So you listen to him keenly. If you have any question, ask. If you have anything that you want to do when you emerge as a president, you tell him now. Not tomorrow when he's not doing well. All you do is go to ChatGPT, prompt him, and then continue on the group. Come back. That's it.
Greatest Nigerian students. Great Nigerian students. All right. This is a presidential blueprint for the renewal of NIMELSSA University of UNIUYO, as it is the philosophy and the motto of the reform drive that we believe in driving reforms through effective leadership. Presented by myself, Emmanuel Duncan, the candidate for presidency, Nigerian Medical Applied Science Students Association, University of UNIUYO chapter. It is our belief, and carefully conscripted by Peter Drucker, and he said, and I quote, "The best way to predict the future is to create it." This is a generation's call to lead. Every generation is remembered by the choices it makes when history places responsibility in its hands. I believe this generation has the opportunity to write a remarkable chapter in the history of NIMELSSA University of UNIUYO, not through rhetoric, but through purposeful leadership, not through promises alone, but through measurable reforms, not for ourselves alone, but for every student who will come after us. Together, let us embrace a future defined by vision, service, and lasting progress. Institutions endure long after the individuals who serve them have moved on. The Students' Association is not merely a platform for representation during a single academic session. It is a living structure through which knowledge is passed, culture is preserved, and the standards of excellence.
Please, if you not keep quiet, you leave. If you know you cannot keep quiet, you leave.
I said that the Students' Association is not merely a platform for representation during a single academic session. It is a living structure through which knowledge is passed, culture is preserved, the standards of excellence are set for those who will one day occupy the very seats we now wish to occupy. When institutions are strong, they outlast the ambitions and limitations of any single leader. When they are weak, even the most gifted individuals cannot rescue them from this drift. This is why the health of NIMELSSA University of UNIUYO must matter to every one of us, regardless of who leads it in any given year. History does not remember generations for the comforts they enjoyed, but for the responsibility they accepted. Every set of students has passed through this department has faced its own defining questions. Questions about representation, about academic support, the dignity of the learning environment, and about the identity of our profession. How each generation answers those questions determine whether it left NIMELSSA University of UNIUYO stronger or weaker than it found it. Ours is no exception. We stand at a moment when the choices we make about governance, advocacy, and institutional memory will shape the experience of students who are not yet admitted into this department and whose names we may never know. NIMELSSA University of UNIUYO deserves continuous improvement, not because it has failed, but because progress is the responsibility of every administration that inherits it. Associations that stop improving do not remain where they are, they decline, because the needs of students evolve even when governance structures do not. What served us adequately 5 years ago may not be sufficient today, and what serves us today will require refinement tomorrow. Continuous improvement is therefore not a criticism of those who came before us. It is a tribute to their labor carried forward with the same seriousness they brought to it. The reform drive was conceived from this understanding. It was not conceived as a rejection of what exists, but a deliberate commitment to strengthen it, to make representation more responsive, academic support more accessible, our learning environment more dignified, our governance structures more effective, our professional identity more visible, and our institutional memory more secure. Each of these commitments forms a pillar of this blueprint, and together they form a single coherent vision for what NIMELSSA University of Uyo can become, where leadership is exercised with intention rather than convenience. This document is an invitation to every student, every class representative, every departmental stakeholder, and every member of this association to consider what kind of chapter we wish to write together. It is offered not as a finished achievement, but as a starting point for the great work ahead, grounded in the conviction that reform is possible when leadership is honest about the present and disciplined about the future. Every administration writes one chapter, ours must write one worthy of remembrance. The philosophy of the reform drive. An African proverb puts it very clear that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. Reform is a word that is often misunderstood. To some, it suggests upheaval, which is the dismantling of what exists in favor of something that is not yet tested. This is not what reform means, and it is not what the reform drive represents. Reform, when properly understood, is the disciplined improvement of a system from within its own legitimate structures, to respect what has been built, question what no longer serves its purpose, and strengthens what remains vital. Reform is evolution, not rupture. Reform is not rebellion. Rebellion asks to overturn authority. Reform seeks to improve it. An association that mistakes one for the other risks losing the very legitimacy it hopes to strengthen. The reform drive does not position itself against the institutions of the NIMELSSA University of Uyo, the institutions being the Constitution, the executive structures, its legislative arms, all the traditions built by previous administrations. It positions itself in service of these institutions, working through them and for them, because lasting change is never achieved by those who walk around the structures meant to sustain it. Reform at its core is an act of stewardship. The steward does not treat what has been entrusted to them as a personal property to be reshaped and will. The steward improves what has been received and is on in better condition than what is found. This is the spirit in which the reform drive approaches leadership, not as an opportunity for personal distinction, but as a temporary trust, emphasis, temporary, because we were leaders in one day, and in one day we would soon report. But also as a temporary trust exercised on behalf of a much longer institutional story. It follows that leadership should build institutions rather than personalities, and an administration that is only remembered for the popularity of the leader in a sense has failed, because popularity fades with the tenure that produced it. The measure of this administration would not be how memorable any individual within it becomes, but how much stronger the NIMELSSA University of Uyo is structurally, academically, and professionally by the time this work is done will be. The following convictions find practical expression through 6 pillars represented by one word: reform. R. Reimagining representation. Representation is the soul of every association. Leadership begins with listening before speaking, engaging before deciding, and serving before leading. Under the reform drive, representation shall become more accessible, more responsive, and even more intentional, because every student concerned deserves attention, Every voice deserves respect, and every aspiration deserves advocacy. Beyond our campus, we shall deliberately expand the academic and professional presence of the University of UYO at regional and national platforms, ensuring that our students are represented wherever excellence is being discussed and opportunities are being created. E of the part of reform, elevating excellence. I'm sorry if my speech bores you, but please, it is very important. Elevating excellence. An association cannot aspire to excellence while students struggle for access to the very academic resources that are necessary for its success. Excellence is cultivated when leadership deliberately invests in learning, encourages scholarship, creates opportunities for professional growth. The reform drive is committed to improving access to academic materials, supporting educational initiatives, and fostering an environment where every student is equipped both to excel within the classroom and beyond the classroom, fortifying the learning environment. The quality of education is influenced by not only what is being taught, but also by the environment in which that learning takes place. Persistent classroom disruptions and inadequate learning conditions undermine academic excellence and possibly the students' dignity. We shall work constructively with departmental authorities to address these concerns, advocate for improved infrastructure, and promote an atmosphere where learning can flourish without unnecessary distractions. O. Organizing for institutional effectiveness. Strong leadership depends on strong institutions. Governance becomes more sustainable when constitutional structures are respected, collaboration is encouraged, and accountability is institutionalized. The reform drive will strengthen the legislative arm of the NIMELSSA University of UYO through the provision of long-standing legislative materials that are not being evident within our space. That is, my government is very poised at providing the Legislative House of Assembly with the mace, the gavel, the mace stand, the gong, and possibly the Speaker's regalia. I think we should clap there. We will support for effective legislative activities and the prompt payment of House of Assembly sitting allowances which have not been present in the last week. Effective governance requires empowered institutions, not ones that are weakened. Restoring professional pride. Medical laboratory science is more than a course of study, you can attest to that. It is a profession dedicated to safeguarding human health through scientific excellence. Our association must be intentional in celebrating this very core identity. We shall institutionalize the celebration of the International Biomedical Science Day, promote professional awareness, encourage student participation in academic and scientific engagement, and strengthen the visibility of the University of UYO, NIMELSSA, within and beyond the university. We will modernize our legacy. Institutions that fail to preserve their history eventually loses it. Every achievement, every constitution, every administration, and every milestone contributes to the very story that makes for NIMELSSA University of UYO. Through the establishment of NIMELSSA Digital Heritage Project, we shall create a permanent repository for the association's history, governing documents, publication, photograph, and records, ensuring that future generations inherit not only institution but also its story. So the last two of my work says that we will publicly celebrate the International Biomedical Science Day, and before my government is over, we will produce the NIMELSSA University of UYO app and website.